D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingen, and David Janes here with you on Wednesday. Willie's back in town
Hey.
after his jaunt through the
Guess
Northeast.
who's back again.
You know what? I find myself singing the Willie D song, even though it's only for silly underdog picks. But we might have to incorporate it outside of football season because it's so good.
Yeah, it is good, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I wish there was a song about me like that, but there's not.
The theme from Adam 12, the old 60s police show that used to be always on. I'm like, why? What is this? Yeah.
There we go.
He's back.
See, they don't know the original, like the original Willie D. With that song.
Yeah, Willie Dynamite.
Yeah, Willie Dynamite.
Yeah.
Go look up Willie Dynamite. Go look at the movie.
Yeah, just see what you think.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
Tell us what you think.
Yeah.
Willie Dynamite is what they called Willie Donick at those parties at Vanderbilt he was telling us about a couple of weeks ago.
That's right.
Woo, streaking the quad. Willie, what are you doing?
Oh, hey, honey.
I'm just everybody's squeaking. They're squeaking quad with me. There's nobody behind.
You a little cold? You a little cold there, Frank?
Oh, man. But we're glad to have Willie back, at least for a few days. The Predators are back in town. They resume their schedule tomorrow against the Seattle Kraken at home. They're coming off of a 6-3 win against the Bruins last night. We'll get into the NHL trade deadline, which, of course, is Friday. We'll also discuss another crazy night in the SEC. Auburn falls to Texas A&M. Vanderbilt loses at home to Arkansas. We'll get into that a little bit later as well. Jonathan Hutton will join us at 11:30, usually 12, but we're going to have Hutton on
the lineup a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to have Hutton on at 11:30. We're going to have Chris Mason on at 1:30.
Yes,
so a lot to get into.
I would just like to say it
Yes.
was a very nice plane ride to come back.
I'm
The
sure it
Predators
was.
have not been a good road team. It's clear by the take a look at the standings, look at the one loss on the road games. It was nice to get a nice road win and a pleasant ride back, even despite the winds and the storms that were going on. It was a smooth ride.
The Predators' 7th road win and in 31 tries.
Wow,
this
that
season.
chicken
I mean,
sandwich.
you can imagine we've had
that
some
chicken
rough
breast
flights.
tastes
We've had some
better.
rough flights after these games.
That
so it was
chicken
nice.
breast tastes better after a win.
It does.
Yes.
It does. It does.
But we start today's show with big news, according to our good friend, Paul Gaharski. Paul Gaharski, at his website this morning, published a story with the headline, "Don't look for Titans to chase Sam Darnold with pricey long-term deal." He writes, quote, "Sam Darnold's on his way to free agency and is the most attractive available quarterback on the market by a lot. But the quarterback-needy Titans aren't going to be chasing him so long as it takes the sort of big money long-term deal he's almost certain to get." And Paul Gaharski was, of course, on with Robbie and Rex Road this morning, as he is every Wednesday, and he discussed this further.
Robert's sitting here saying PK is absolutely right. It's going to be Levis. I don't see how people don't see that. Are you saying right now that Will Levis is going to quarterback the Titans next year? Okay, I just want to make sure.
I'm saying
I just want to make sure.
I expect he's going to play games. I expect he's in the mix, but they're not going into the season with the intention of Will Levis being the starting quarterback week 1 or being whatever. But I think it's probably a competitive mix. The market has dried up. The Carr, who they like, maybe Cousins still comes free, and that's a possibility. They were never into Rodgers. Stafford thing didn't turn into anything. There are a lot of guys that we spent a lot of time talking about, and nothing's popped. Everything's gone back to where it was.
I mean, listen, this is what happens during this time of year. Around the combine, there's this fever pitch. Well, before the combine, there's this fever pitch of who's going where, what quarterback, this quarterback, no, are they going to franchise? Just all this stuff circling around, free agency. And then you get into the combine. And then you start to talk to these GMs and head coaches, and then you come out and you think, well, maybe this team is not going to lean that way. Maybe this team's not going to do that. What season is it? It's line season. They're not going to tell you exactly what they're going to do. Now, as far as the Titans being totally out on Sam Darnold, I hope they are. I'm in agreement with the notion that the Titans are moving on from Sam Darnold. Because to me, he just hadn't shown enough. And you're trying to build a team. And I think at the quarterback position, that's the position where you need not be paying top dollar to a quarterback that has only proven himself 1 year. You need to spread that out throughout your roster. You need to build back up your roster. But make no mistake, I do believe that Will Levis will be on this roster. He will have to compete. But I think he's sort of unless he shows that he's done this complete 180 and he went out to Arizona and worked with I think that's where it's at.
Jordan Palmer.
Yeah, work with the quarterback. He comes back and he starts. Okay, now we can start having a conversation about, has Will Levis really matured as a quarterback? Has he developed, or is he developing at a pace that the Titans like right now? But make no mistake, you have to bring somebody else in. You say the market is dried up. It's not dried up. It doesn't have top-end quarterbacks, but it's not dried up. You do have individuals that have had some success throughout the NFL in their career. So why not bring one of those guys? Because any guy that you bring now is just a bridge guy. That's all he is.
Yeah.
Until you get either you're going to draft a guy and develop him, or you're just going to wait.
I go back to this premise for everything that they do this year. No matter who you pick up, what money you spend, what quarterback you go after, who you draft, you're probably not going to have any chance of competing for the Super Bowl next year, this coming year. So build your roster, fill the holes, get the best buys. Don't overpay for somebody who's not going to get you there. You're going to lose with Sam Darnold or without Sam Darnold. So why pay Sam Darnold way more than he's worth, which is what's going to happen probably, unless everybody gets smart. We'll see. Just take what you can get. If Will Levis ends up playing some games, that's all right, because the right quarterback isn't there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you think Cam Ward's the right quarterback, then
Yeah.
pick Cam Ward if that's what it is. But that's the premise I go off of.
Paul Kaharski writes at his website, quote, I believe the Titans, if they pass on Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, who seems less attractive to them, I assume he means Sanders there, the Titans are prepared for the worst case scenario where they sign a stopgap player like Mac Jones or Jameis Winston at quarterback and go with him and Levis.
Have
For
I not said this
2025.
from the
Yeah,
start?
Hasn't that
this
been
is fine.
sort of
It's
the
a-
plan?
What's my word?
At least
Exploratory.
Yeah.
You guys are going to probably cross that off the list by the end of the
I
summer.
actually like the
Yeah.
term, so I
Exploratory.
might not cross it off the list.
Think Lewis and Clark, going west. They're heading west. They're just exploring. They're seeing what's out there. You might come across.
Who's the Sacagawea in this metaphor?
Maybe is it Mac Jones?
Be
Is it
careful.
Daniel? You come across the Jones family. There's
Yes.
Mac. There's Daniel. There's other Joneses.
Yeah.
There's got to be another
Keeping
Jones
up with
somewhere,
the
right?
Joneses.
The
gotta
Titans and
keep
the
down.
Joneses.
It's hard to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, there you go.
It's hard to keep
Right
up
there.
with the Joneses. But of course, when this was brought to my attention, the first person I thought about, of course, is Jared Stillman. And we'll hear what Jared has to say about this at 2:00. But this is something that I saw was interesting today on ESPN. Dan Graziano, along with the NFL Nation reporters, which includes Teron Davenport,
Mhm.
Dan Graziano looked at he looked at 7 of the top free agents. Then he solicited offers from the reporters whose teams are reportedly interested in those players. And then Graziano picked the deal that he thinks that player will take. So for Sam Darnold, there are 2, the Las Vegas Raiders and the Tennessee Titans. Ryan McFadden, who I presume is the Raiders NFL Nation reporter at ESPN. The Raiders offer 3 years, $125 million, $55 million guaranteed. And Ryan McFadden writes, quote, new Raiders coach Pete Carroll wants his team to win right away. And the key to making his goal a reality is landing a franchise quarterback. This year's quarterback draft class isn't as strong as last year, which could force Las Vegas to be aggressive in free agency and give Darnold a big-time deal after a career season. He's only 27 years old, and his skill set should fit coordinator Chip Kelly's offense. The AFC West is loaded at quarterback, and Darnold can make an immediate impact, which the Raiders desperately need. They were 30th in QBR last season at 40.4. So the projected offer from the Raiders, 3 years, $125 million with $55 million guaranteed.
What is that? 40
40-ish.
40-ish a year.
Yes.
See, here's what may be the problem. It's not the 3 years 125, it's the guarantee.
By the way,
I think he's going to want more guarantee money.
So 125 divided by 3 is roughly 41.6. So slightly above what he would have made if he had been franchise tagged by the Vikings.
Exactly. So, and that tells you that the Vikings had no intentions on bringing him back,
which Tim mentioned with us yesterday.
Exactly. Absolutely. So I don't look so much at the 3 years 125. The 125, that's a big number. It's right around, I think, what people believe Darnold will get. I think it may be closer. And I told Willie, I think this may be closer to the Baker Mayfield of 35 million or 36 million. But I think what he's going to try to do, that's why when we look at the second offer, which you will talk about,
yes,
I think he would be more inclined to take that offer as opposed to the Raiders offer if he wants guarantee money.
So remember, the Raiders offer 3 years. This is speculative, by the way.
Yes.
3 years, $125 million with $55 million guaranteed, according to Ryan McFadden of ESPN, who, again, I assume is the ESPN NFL Nation Raiders reporter. Our very own Teron Davenport countered with a 3-year, $120 million contract with $85 million guaranteed. Teron writes, quote, "This deal gets Darnold to the coveted $40 million yearly average and offers an opportunity for him to be the starter for the next 3 years. Darnold would also get to re-enter the free agent market at 30 years old to get another crack at a big contract. The Titans can use more of their free agent funds and turn to the draft to complement Darnold while he attempts to prove himself capable of being their long-term answer. We'll also toss in an opt-out option on this deal after 2 years." So from Teron Davenport to Sam Darnold, 3 years, $120 million, $85 million guaranteed. According to Graziano, the decision, Darnold agrees on a new deal with the Titans. The higher guarantee swings it. Here, Darnold would have a little bit of a concern that the Titans might also take a guy in the draft, leaving him to potentially get Kirk Cousins. But the Raiders bring that same concern. This is more money, and Darnold would still get to hit free agency again at 29 or 30.
Well, I think the two approaches are worth noting. New Raiders coach Pete Carroll wants his team to win right away. Now, if they think they can win right away, okay, good luck.
In that division.
Dive in there. Dive into the Sam Darnold world, and you've got your guy. If you think he is a, quote, franchise quarterback, which is in the article, that's landing a franchise quarterback. I do not believe franchise quarterbacks get let go by the team they just played for and had a career year.
I have a stat for that. According to ESPN. The only other NFL quarterback to change teams the year after throwing at least 30 touchdown passes is Jameis Winston, whose departure from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2020 was prompted largely by the 30 interceptions he threw in 2019.
So have at it. If that's the Pete Carroll and the Raiders, look, Pete Carroll didn't come in there to have a 5-year build, right? He wants to win. Okay, go for it. The Titans should not do that. It makes sense what they're doing. Don't overpay for a guy that is not going to elevate where the roster is right now. You've got to build the roster.
Now, I do agree with TD from this standpoint. If this deal was presented to me and I'm the GM, if I present this deal to Darnold, and this is the deal that we've come up with, I like it, but not at 40 million. I'm more so 37, 38, somewhere around there, and still give him the guarantee that he needs. But also what it does that TD talked about is it still gives them an opportunity to go out and build their roster. Listen, I'm not a huge Darnold fan because I don't think he's going to get the Titans where they need to be. I don't think he's going to win them an extra 5 or 6 games by himself, maybe 2, yes. But it does, if you do surround Darnold with other good players, dynamic players at certain and key positions, I think you will see sort of the Ryan Tannehill production right around there. So the deal may be good, but I'm just not at 40 million. I won't touch it,
But
not one bit.
I think just remember though, bang for your buck.
Yeah, that's why I'm going lower in the price.
Tannehill was so inexpensive, and he had Henry, and he had a building offense that ended up with Corey Davis and AJ Brown. The Titans aren't close to that. Right now.
I know that.
So I don't think Tannehill at his best could elevate this roster. Like Tannehill in his prime, whatever you feel like his prime could take this Titans roster and get it done. Now, would I sign Darnold if I could get him for what they got Tannehill for? Like, I don't know, $7 million the first year?
Well, because Miami was paying.
Right.
Yeah.
They got him at a bargain. But that's what I think I'm looking for. I'm looking for a guy that might have some upside that could give me good quarterback play for a bargain price. And then I say, well, does this guy fit exactly what we're looking for? And now I've got my roster a couple of big steps forward, and I've got more money to go address other needs. That's the approach that I think is much more sound than I'm getting my, quote, franchise quarterback, Sam Darnold.
No, he wouldn't. I wouldn't consider him.
Not a franchise quarterback.
I
can't even believe they put that in the article.
I think the best case
who buys that?
I think the best case scenario for teams hoping to sign Darnold is that, as Derek has said, he gets the Baker Mayfield deal that Mayfield got after he proved it to the Buccaneers, which was around $33 million.
Right, and that's basically what happened with Tannehill. Right, they took Tannehill. He played well, and then they rewarded him with the bigger contract. I agree with you. I think Tannehill and Darnold are about the same level of quarterback. I mean, aren't we kind of in agreement?
Yeah,
if you give them a good roster, they can be a good quarterback for you.
Yeah, I thought Tannehill had displayed in his earlier years to be a better quarterback than Sam Darnold early on.
Yeah,
his problem was he got hurt too.
There was a lot of 8 and 8s and 7 and 9s in there.
But he proved to be a good quarterback even before he got here to the Titans. He had years. Darnold hasn't had that. Can Darnold have a Ryan Tannehill type of season? Even though I still believe Ryan Tannehill at his height and what we've seen of Sam Darnold, I'm still taking Ryan Tannehill. But he can have a Ryan Tannehill type of season if indeed you surround him with dynamic players at the wide receiver position and honestly upgrade the tight end position.
I seem to remember a quote that Mike Vrabel had at one point about Ryan Tannehill, where he said something to the effect of, we have to be great around him. And how many quarterbacks are there in the NFL where you don't have to be great around them in order for them to succeed?
Franchise quarterbacks.
Patrick Mahomes has shown an ability to do that. Josh Allen has shown an ability to do that.
Joe Burrow, I think.
Burrow, Lamar. You got about 4 guys that have shown to do that.
So Darnold, to me, is just another example of, if you are not the top of the line quarterback, you have to be great around those quarterbacks in order for them to be successful. Now, just because, like Jared made this point yesterday, it's not like the Titans would sign Sam Darnold and just be like, oh, we're done. This is our team. But I remain skeptical that Darnold with the Titans would help them do what they ultimately want to do.
It goes back to, I think, how do you define success within Sam Darnold play with an organization? If you're paying him $40 million, you're expecting a certain level of reward from that. If you're paying him $40 million, what I'm expecting, you get me to the playoffs. You got to get me to the playoffs, regardless of what. You got to get me to the playoffs.
Yeah, if he were $20 million, it'd be a Very
Uh-huh.
different discussion.
Exactly. So if you're going to go out and get Darnold, what you're saying to everybody, and I don't care what the roster was and what it continues to be, when you pay him $40 million, if you don't get to if you don't get to the playoff, it's a disappointment. And it's you. Why did you get him?
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on Paul Gaharski's report? Don't look for Titans to chase Sam Darnold with pricey long-term deal. Your thoughts on that? Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow will join us coming up next. We'll bring him into this conversation, but you can get in on it as well. 615-737-1025. Hey, do you want to win tickets to a Predators game? Then be listening to Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow morning for Preds Pick to Click. All you have to do is guess a Preds goal scorer, and if they put the puck in the back of the net, you win. Be listening tomorrow for the cue to call on Robbie and Rexroad.
All right, time to talk about Lee Company. The Predators in a pattern right now of playing teams that just lost to the Wild. They beat the Bruins last night, who had just lost to the Wild. Tomorrow they play the Seattle Kraken, who just lost to the Wild. So let's see if the pattern holds. Back in Smashville tomorrow night. Our coverage, as you just heard from Max Hers, will start at 6 o'clock. And yes, it is a 7 o'clock game tomorrow. Originally, it was scheduled later in the evening because it was going to be on national TV. That's no longer the case. So don't show up at 8:30 in the middle of the second period. You don't want that. 7 o'clock start. Lee Company will be our sponsor, and Lee Company has been hard at work, as they always are. They've been in business since 1944 at keeping your home ready, raring to go, efficient through the hard months. And the summer hard months are coming up. Still a little chilly right now. You're probably still running the heater. Hopefully that's running well for you. If it's not, 615-567-1000 or go to leecompany.com. Get your air conditioning checked for the summer months. 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. In fact, get everything under one umbrella with the home maintenance plan. That's the best way to go. Small monthly fee, annual checkups, discounts on repairs. It's Lee Company, 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. This week's Nashville's best deal is from Brewster's Real Ice Cream in Hendersonville. See why Brewster's is a scoop above the rest with the best ice cream, shakes, sundaes, splits, blasts, and more. Visit thegamenashville.com/deals now and get half off a $50 gift card while supply is last. We are joined by our friend Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Hutton, we were just talking about Paul Kaharski's story at his website. Don't look for Titans to chase Sam Darnold with pricey long-term deal. I know that there are plenty of people that would love the Titans to land the top quarterback on the market. But according to Paul Kaharski, don't look for that to happen. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, first off, good reporting by Paul. So we heard some teams involved with the Matthew Stafford saga last week, didn't we?
Yes.
We certainly heard about the Raiders and Brady. We heard about the Giants. I didn't hear anything about the Titans. And if the Titans aren't going to get involved with Matthew Stafford on a long-term deal, I don't know why they would jump in on Sam Darnold. Let's just look at it from that angle. I think that's where my mind goes, is like, if you're in on Darnold, you'd be in on Stafford. And I think it also it points to what they've said with this new regime is holding true. They're not going to jump into something without first deciding the course and the plan. And holding the number 1 overall pick gives them plenty of advantage, because they can just take Cam Ward if they really like the traits and how to mold Cam Ward. They can trade out and potentially pick up a Kirk Cousins, for instance. I'm just throwing his name out there. Don't drive off a cliff for those who don't like what we saw from Cousins with Atlanta. But there are other options other than Sam Darnold and the 1 year we saw from him. Although it is a down year for teams that need a quarterback, and Darnold's at the top of the list for a reason. He played very well.
He's the hottest girl at school right now.
Right, we
he's
have
the
that
hottest girl at
metaphor,
school.
and we also
Hey.
have the Lewis and Clark expedition, the exploratory. We're going to the west, and we're just going to come across the Joneses. We're going to come across the Cousins family. We're going to come across, we're just going to see what we find and find the right person, and the budget will be according.
It's the Oregon Trail. Is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
I love that game. That was such a great
Yeah,
game.
I like the comparison to the hottest girl at school. It's the hottest girl at school full of 7-irons. All of them are good for 150 yards out.
Right.
Oh, man. I certainly wasn't in the running for the hottest girl in school when I was in school, so I have no frame of reference for this. But let's just say, Hutton, that a lot of Titans fans' worst fears are realized. That the Titans decide to sign a stopgap player. Paul Kaharski mentions Mac Jones. He mentions Jameis Winston. Let's say they sign one of those quarterbacks off the street. Those quarterbacks compete with Will Levis, and Will Levis is starting game for the Tennessee Titans this season. I think that's the nightmare scenario for a lot of Titans fans. How plausible do you think that is?
Well, I mean, if they don't take Cam Ward, yeah, it's plausible, because they're looking for a short-term contract at a position that is going to be high market for the average skill set right now, a la Sam Darnold, compared to what we're seeing. I mean, look, there were 54 starters, I believe, in the NFL this past season. Like, if Will Levis is on the roster, he's going to play games. There's going to be injuries. The question is, can you win more than 3 games than what they had with the alternative of Will Levis, which is Mason Rudolph? What level do they need to be, and what's the plan for next year? It's very difficult to just say we're going to get one of the quarterbacks next year, when a year ago the quarterback crop looked better than what we presumed it would be right now. So I looking ahead is difficult. And honestly, that's what Sean Payton did in Denver. I think he went Bo Nix at quarterback there, knowing what could be the following season, because he said he didn't really like the way he threw the football at the combine last year. Point being, let's back up to if they're in the room, what are we actually seeing in front of us? They're not wanting to spend top dollar on a quarterback that they're going to be trying to get out of a contract in 2 years. They want to go young at the position and develop the quarterback, draft, develop, retain. And I think they do that with the number 1 overall pick, or they like one of these other guys that they're going to end up drafting, and they bring them along the way. I don't know if for a team that needs a quarterback desperately, and you've got Cam Ward sitting there, don't you, unless you're going to get a great trade offer, you almost have to take the quarterback now if you're not going to go with a guy like Darnold or that tier of quarterback guys, because this is a time to compete. And if I'm Brian Callahan, what am I thinking? Right?
You need to
You
win now.
got to show improvement.
Yeah.
You got to show improvement. That you got to show development. That's hard to do with a guy like Mac Jones coming in.
Yeah, unless you get Mac Jones to that level he was at his rookie
Sure.
year and try to develop him from that point on, I think you may have something. But I think a lot of this, a lot of it will be determined, or we will know, Hut, by how they choose to go about in free agency. If they, even though Paul says they're out on Sam Darnold, that doesn't mean that they're out on Sam Darnold, because free agency hasn't started yet, So, but if you go get a Sam Darnold, and we talked about this earlier before you came on, you're close to that $40 million mark. I wouldn't go close to $40 million. I would give them a little bit more than what Tampa gave Baker Mayfield. But when you pay that type of money for an individual at that position, doesn't that indicate to your fan base that we want to win, and not just win, we want to make it to the playoffs now, because you're paying the money for that particular position?
Yeah, but man, I mean,
that's if they choose to go that route.
I realize the Titans don't have a great alternative right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but we're talking about Sam Darnold. He had a great year, but what would this be, his 5th team?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I mean, that's tough. That he's a journeyman. That's what we're seeing. And the Titans in this scenario, Mace, he would be in another short-term deal. I mean, in that case, he's better off staying where he is and throwing the football to Justin Jefferson, potentially. That would be my view if I'm taking a 1-year offer or something like that and coming back to the team that wanted me to test the market. I mean, if they're not going to give Darnold a 3-year plus type contract offer, I don't know why he would be dead set on coming to Nashville versus other options. And one of those options being just going back to the Vikings and playing under a number for a year that was more conducive to that organization than coming here and just being a stopgap quarterback. There are situations like that fits Aaron Rodgers, that fits his timeline. That doesn't fit Sam Darnold, who's still in his 20s.
We had a conversation yesterday. I was toward the end of the show about Shedeur Sanders and what has come out about him from one quarterback's coach saying, didn't like the arrogance or whatnot. What do you make of that? Because this time of year, one, I don't like it, because what does that gain you other than you're lying because you want to position yourself, and which I think more than likely is happening. You're lying to position yourself to potentially have a chance to draft him. But then don't you have to do damage control if indeed that is your goal and you end up drafting him again, because now you've put out this information that isn't true about an individual, especially when you talk about the character, because a lot of times at that position, that's really high on your board as far as who you want to lead your organization.
Oh, Matt. So think about how just the madness of this. Okay. Mm-hmm. Breaking news: Shedeur Sanders is arrogant. Like, I mean, that's what we got out of the combine. Like that. I mean, that's prime time. They're cocky. They're confident, and then they back it up with wins. Like they're on camera all the time. And I guess Cam Ward wasn't, but he stood at a podium and said, "Take me number 1. I'm going to make you pay for it." Like. That's where we are. I I mean, I don't know about. I want to know which quarterback. Whatever quarterback coach said this, Mace, he's not going to be coaching any good quarterbacks anytime soon, based on the fact that I mean, Joe Burrow's not arrogant. I mean, come on, let's talk about some of the top players in the league and what they say at podiums, and then go and back it up. I want guys that will put it out there and then try to go prove it and have to stand up at the podium again and back it up, or answer questions and give and receive those receipts. I mean, I want that in inside the player that I'm about to invest in, because that's a chip on the shoulder that they have manufactured on their own. I mean, the arrogance of Shedeur Sanders makes up the player that he is, and the intangibles that make him a leader on the field for a team that had won one game prior to he and the whole regime arriving there. I mean, the proof is on the field and how the team would react to him and follow him. There are quarterbacks who are leaders and quarterbacks who are just quarterbacks, and Shedeur has shown that he can lead. So can Cam Ward. I don't have a problem with either one of them coming in with a little arrogance, because I mean, they have a friendly competition going amongst themselves, working out against one another. I like it, because we don't see enough of that anymore. A lot of them, working out, in big groups, but not to this level where they're putting it out there for everyone to consume.
So Jonathan Hutton is with us, and I think it comes down to this: if some people are really in and convince themselves, and I mean multiple teams, that Cam Ward is clearly the best player, that's only good news for the Titans. Whether they think that, but and if they think that's great, they can take him. But what I think the ideal scenario is 2 or 3 teams really believe, hey, we've got to go get this guy. Which way do you lean if you're the Titans? Because I'm the first to say I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say Cam Ward's the guy or not the guy. I mean, I just can't. Nobody can know that, because I think we would all agree he looks a level below the belief you would have had in a Joe Burrow or some of the other clear-cut number ones.
No doubt.
I guess you would say Peyton Manning would be in that category, although it's hindsight's 20/20. But do you think the Titans' leverage is increasing right now with that first pick, if there's a lot of momentum for Ward?
Yeah, but it is. But here's the thing that everyone has to keep in mind: the teams are just now beginning to meet him.
Mm-hmm.
The Titans met him for the first time in person last week, and they're having him in town for his official visit this week. That's the valuable time frame where they really decide on the makeup and the mold and the moxie of the player. Like that matters in the rapport of coach and player or organization. Or hey, here's one of the managers that was leading him around office to office. What was he like whenever he wasn't in the offices, when you were just in the hallway? Things like that matter. And some of the intangibles there, that they're getting to know the person, the human being that he is. But by all accounts, he'll be great at that. But I mean, to say the Titans had made up their mind one way or the other prior to the combine, they hadn't met him the way they had met Shedeur Sanders at the Shrine Bowl. Willie, I think it's tough to say. I mean, yeah, it's great to have maybe the Jets, the Giants, Raiders want to move up and make the move to number 1. The question I would have is, how far would the Titans be to move back to get a player that's going to help them now, and also acquire the picks that they covet and that they're presumably going to acquire in a haul if you have multiple teams wanting number 1. There's a price tag for number 1. There's a price tag for quarterback and franchise quarterback. The Titans will be getting both.
Do you believe that also what helps their leverage is that, other than Darnold, right, who now is in a great position because of Carr staying, Stafford staying, and you're in the wild west, right? I've done the Lewis and Clark thing. You've got your 150-yard 7-iron, but right, that's what it is, right? These are your choices: is go get your guy high in the draft, go take a shot at a Will Levis or a Malik Willis or somebody lower, outside the first round. Your choices are limited because there are 2 steady veterans in Carr and Stafford that are off the market. Now, does that increase the Titans' leverage?
Yes. I mean, absolutely. Okay, so here's the other factor. What's the stability and the patience level of said ownership where you are if you're getting desperate to move up?
That's the question to me, and I believe the Titans should be patient and not feel like they have to try to win this year, because
Right.
I don't think no matter who their quarterback is, I don't like their chances of doing that.
Right. And so the message that's being portrayed is 30 picks over 3 seasons, over 3 drafts, 12, they went 12 in the top 100. I mean, that's 3 drafts. So I mean, that's patience. That's a plan, right? That's laying it out there. So if you're willing to pass on the quarterback at 1, that's saying that the investment is in the future plan as the collective whole, rebuilding the depth of the roster, which has been really bad. And you do that by acquiring picks and trading players and doing other things. So do you give up on the quarterback if you're not if Cam Ward is the 3rd or 4th quarterback selected last year, if he's in last year's draft, is that worthy of being number 1 this year over trading back a couple of spots depending on where you fall and still being able to acquire Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? That's realistic if you swap picks with the Giants, for instance. There are scenarios where you end up with still the elite caliber player. It's just not the quarterback, and that's because you have the security knowing that you have some time to do what you were hired to do. That's the key in everything, is how secure is the footing right now for those that are making that call, or do you have to get the quarterback to start winning now and hope that you pick the right guy? And really, it's not even a coin flip right now. It seems it's Cam Ward or no one, even though I think Shadour's style fits Callahan's offense very well.
You made a great point, though, Hutton. This could change, right? We're still in only about the 2nd inning of the process.
Yeah.
Or maybe the 4th inning, right? Now that the combine's over, but there's still a lot of research and there's a lot of time for the media and the narrative to swing. And everybody does their thing between now and the time they actually draft.
That's right. But there is a speed date element to this, because in 7 days, that open window begins for negotiation. So if you have your plan in place for a veteran quarterback, and you could do both, you could bring a guy in if it's a stopgap and still draft the quarterback, but you need to be able to get the pedals, moving and the wheels rolling down the path of the direction you want to go. And you want to have flexibility on draft night, because you may get a trade offer that you just cannot pass up. And you want to have the other plan in place, the plan B. The plan A can happen if they want to go rookie. They're guaranteed to get the guy they want as they sit right now in the draft. But is that the guy they want right now, or is it down the road and you have a veteran currently? The monetary aspect of that is something they're discussing now, and they have to do it quickly based on how the meetings go with Ward and where they want to allocate their money this year in free agency.
Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow joining us on DBD. Hutton, great stuff as always. We'll chat next week.
Yeah, always a great visit, guys. Have a great rest of the week.
You as well. 615-737-1025. We will take your reaction. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Happy Wednesday. This is Derek Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution or a goal to shed some extra pounds, only to come up short. But at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. We enjoyed our conversation with Jonathan Hutton so much we went a little long. So we will take your reaction to any and all quarterback news. Paul Kaharski at paulkaharski.com says, don't look for the Titans to chase after Sam Darnold with the type of big money contract that he's looking for. Any thoughts on the quarterback situation around the NFL? Let us know. 615-737-1025. We will get to your reaction next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063. The Game. D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. A couple of NFL news tidbits to pass along. According to Adam Schefter, the Jacksonville Jaguars are planning to release veteran wide receiver Christian Kirk. So Christian Kirk's time with the Jags is coming to an end. According to Schefter, Kirk will save the Jaguars by releasing Kirk, I should say. The Jaguars will save over $10.4 million against the cap. Kirk now becomes a free agent in an increasingly crowded wide receiver market. Tyler Lockett also released by the Seattle Seahawks.
You know, we got talking about Saquon Barkley has got the new contract and what that might do for Derrick Henry. And maybe there's a little bit of a shifting of thinking. Do we think with this, this bucket of wide receivers that all of a sudden is getting pretty full with Adams yesterday, and now you've got these guys that you're mentioning, you could, unlike Sam Darnold, right, where you got to overpay to get the guy, you could get a bargain. These guys are in the bargain bin now. What were the references you made, Adam? Of the different bins,
right?
What store
you would
we
go? I felt like it was usually at the car wash.
It could be the car wash.
I felt like it was at the car wash.
Could be the truck stop.
Yes.
Could be along the way, a big bin of tapes.
I mentioned
CDs.
Blockbuster because there were times where you would sift through we need to get rid of these DVDs and VHS tapes, so just take them. And then you would find like a really good movie in there.
Yeah.
And you're like, I can't believe this is in there.
Right.
And then you would go to the cashier and they're like, oh, that's not supposed to be in there. And I'm like, look, if it's in the bin, you've got to honor it.
But what if Christian Kirk's in the bin and you're like, hey, Christian Kirk is in the bin. I'll take him for $3.99 or whatever you paid for the movie that you disputed at Blockbuster. I think that's what we're getting with some of these wide receivers, right? As much as they might be past their prime, if you can get them at a price where you're not paying an arm and a leg, it changes your view of these guys.
I think it does. Obviously the top of the list now would be Davante Adams. But at that price point, I don't think no one's going to touch him. Now, I think free agency from this standpoint, when it comes to wide receivers, it has a lot of experience. So if you need that extra veteran guy to sort of, complete your wide receiver room, or at least complete your top 3 or 4, then guys like Davante Adams, who can be a number 2, hell of a number 2. Is he still a number 1? On some teams, yes, he still is a number 1. But with the Jets, he wasn't supposed to be the number 1 at all. Garrett Wilson was supposed to be that guy. He is that guy. But if you're looking for a bona fide number 2, this is where Davante Adams come in. This is where an Amari Cooper comes in, or Chris Godwin. But you're talking about even a Stephon Diggs, but you're talking about Godwin and Diggs who are coming off injuries. So you can get guys, like you said, Willie, because there's not this top tier individual that is going to command a lot of money. You can get a few of these guys for, below market value at that position. But what you're getting is a guy that's declining, but still good enough to add production to your top 3 wide receivers.
So we'll keep an eye on the bargain bin when it comes to NFL free agents. But Derek, you mentioned, I hesitate to call it a report, but Josina Anderson had this really long tweet the other day about a quarterback coach, an unnamed quarterback coach, who said that Shedeur Sanders came off, I believe she said the quotes were brash and arrogant in meetings with teams, or the team that the quarterback coach works for, at least. Okay, I found it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So it's funny,
It's
actually.
very long.
It is very long. So I say this respectfully. So the website Defector, which has a lot of the staff of the original Deadspin, they give an award every year for reporters who have the worst use of syntax and they've named it after Shams Charania, because if you ever read a Shams Charania report, he always uses these extemporaneous words and these $5 words that don't fit into the sentence, and it's just really hard to read. And Josina Anderson, I'll have to find the actual name of the award, but Josina Anderson is giving Shams Charania a run for his money when it comes to the way that she writes. But this was the top of the report. I am disappointed to hear that a quarterback's coach from a team drafting in the top 7 referred to Shedeur Sanders as coming off brash and arrogant in his team interview and making his assessment known to a number of people per source. I am purposely not naming the team as not to directly call the team out. I'm just sharing that this coach's personal assessment is the direct opposite from how Sanders came across to many reporters in his press conference with the media at the combine. Yada, 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 yada. But then Todd McShay. So Todd McShay, you know him from ESPN. He worked in tandem with Mel Kiper. He left ESPN, or was let go by ESPN. They've done a lot of cost cutting over there. He has resurfaced with The Ringer. And I like Todd McShay. I think he has a lot of insight. And he has his own podcast now. I believe it's called the Todd McShay Report. And here is a clip from Todd McShay's podcast where he's talking about what he's heard from teams who have talked to Shedeur Sanders.
The 2 people that I spoke to were in meetings and had these individual meetings that I just laid out to you, what they are, who's in there, and why they're important. Teams in the top 10 drafting that need a quarterback. The 2 people that I spoke to in these positions left the meeting feeling like Shedeur Sanders was not overly concerned with what they thought of him. They had a 15-minute meeting with them, and when they were done, they both said in different ways, different words, that they did not feel like Shedeur Sanders cared all that much about what that organization thought of him.
So that was the first part. His co-host just wanted to clarify, okay, when you're saying that Shedeur Sanders does not care what the other teams or what the teams think of him, you're not talking positively, right? Like you're not saying he's so confident in himself, he doesn't care what other teams have to say. Basically, this was McShay's response.
And that's not said in any kind of a positive light, correctly. It wasn't like they came in there and he knew who he was and he wasn't concerned about impressing us. It's more of a negative tone, the way you're saying that, right? You're saying it in a way that he did not come in with, ready to impress, ready to show us what kind of a young man he is, what kind of a leader he can be, all of the positive things. That's what you're saying, correct?
This was not okay. I'll make a joke in a second, but I do. All right. So let's go through this in the right order. A couple of the quotes that I put in there. One said that it wasn't a professional approach. One person that I talked to said the best way I can describe it is it just wasn't it wasn't a professional approach. Shedeur Sanders did not take a professional approach to this interview. The other person I talked to said he wasn't taking it seriously at all. I didn't get the sense that he was taking it seriously. So when you hear it wasn't a professional approach and you hear he wasn't taking it all that seriously, that's not the interview that you're looking, it's not the response you're looking for from a potential suitor, from somewhere you plan to go play.
So that was Todd McShay on his podcast about what he's hearing regarding Shedeur Sanders. There was the Josina Anderson tweet. And by the way, the name of the award that Defector gives out, it's the Shams Charania Award for Excellence in Divulging of Information Through Syntax Comprehended by Many.
A mouthful.
Yeah.
So Josina Anderson, I believe, has won the award. Here, just for context, here was a nominee from Shams Charania by Defector for this award. It was a story he wrote about Jared Vanderbilt, the Lakers forward. Quote, Lakers forward Jared Vanderbilt has recently experienced fluid in his left knee during his rehabilitation from offseason procedures to both feet and is targeting early January for his return. The Lakers told ESPN on Tuesday. There's just a lot of extra words.
Yeah.
That's not even
not as concise.
That's not even the best stuff. Yeah. But that's my point. I digress.
So throw a few
more
words in the salad.
He can get straight to the point.
Yeah,
so,
get more to the point.
So there's just
okay.
Yes.
When I hear this stuff about Shedeur, I think it could be a number of different things. And it could be it could be construed as negative. It could also be that the team that really wants him wants this out and wants to poison the waters so that they can have him available to that team when they pick. I feel like that's the oldest trick in the book. Now, could it be true what they're saying? I thought back, have I ever acted like that? And my answer is absolutely yes, right? If there's a team that I really didn't want to play for, if I'm Shedeur, right?
Mm-hmm.
One tactic that you could use, it may not be a smart thing. It may
Yeah.
be it may not be something that you would advise somebody to do.
You tank the interview.
Yeah, you kind of tank the interview. You kind of give the signal, if there's a, we always come back to real life, right? If I'm talking to a girl and you get that vibe, I kind of realize I shouldn't make the move to try to ask this girl out. She's clearly giving me the signals that she's like, don't ask me out.
Exactly.
Right. I think this happens in human nature. Like, I remember my story is 1988. I was being recruited. Eventually I got signed by Vanderbilt. That's who I wanted to go with, but I was being recruited by some other schools. One was University of Central Florida, UCF. At the time, they were not good. They were really bad. And the coach was on the outs. They were like 6-25. The coach called me right when the Mets are playing game 1 of the LCS. Dwight Gooden against Oral Hershiser. It's a game I'm looking forward to all day. Here's the coach. I didn't want to be rude and say, hey, look, I got to go. So I let him talk, but I'm listening to him talk about UCF. I'm watching Gooden pitch to Kirk Gibson. I'm not paying attention to what this guy's saying at all.
He doesn't have your full attention.
He doesn't have my full attention.
But that's his fault.
I'm just
for
saying this
calling
is
you
human
then.
nature, right? I hope it didn't make me a bad person. I hope the guy probably got the vibe. Like, I don't think we're going to get this guy.
Yeah.
And they didn't.
No, he's not coming here.
But, well, okay, so your thoughts on this?
Listen,
teammate?
if there's 2 ways that you can sort of approach this. Essentially, what it is a job interview. And in a job interview, you want to put your best foot forward. Now, if you are considered one of the top candidates, and you know that I'm not going to that said team, or I'm not going to take that said job, but yet and still they want to interview me, I do still believe you walk in with a professional approach, but you may not be totally in tune to what was going on. Maybe that could have been, listen, if it happened exactly the way that Todd McShay spelled it out, then listen, you're only hurting yourself. You're not helping yourself. But if it was just you just kind of felt the vibe, they felt the vibe, like, we really are not in because he said a top 10 team. All these teams don't need a quarterback. So it's like, why are you bringing me in here? Okay, I'll go through the interview, but I know just as well as you know that you and I drafted me. So that person didn't tell them what their approach was. Are they just bringing him in the room to kind of feel him out, to see what he's about? Or are they really thinking, I'm going to draft this guy? Either or. But again, do you put your best foot forward in any situation? I think yes, you're supposed to. But listen, I haven't been in these rooms, in a very, very long time. The athlete has changed tremendously. The athlete has changed tremendously. The way they go about their business, the way they play on the field, the way they interact with fans, the way they interact with journalists or columnists or anybody else, radio hosts. They change. And if you haven't figured that out as an executive, then you're not doing your job.
We've talked about this a lot when it comes to Shedeur Sanders. His last name has opened up a lot of doors for him. On the other side, however, is the fact that when you are perceived as, well, he's only in this position because of who his father is, you have to work extra hard to dispel the notion that you're not worthy of the spot that you're in. Now, if Shedeur Sanders would have participated in the combine, Would that have made a difference? Or the Shrine Bowl? He didn't participate in either of those events. But, and we'll get into this coming up next, there are certainly questions about Shedeur Sanders as a football player, right? How good of a quarterback is Shedeur Sanders? There are plenty of legitimate questions about how good of a quarterback Shedeur Sanders is. The problem is, on top of that, you have his personality. And Derek, we talked about this last week. I am not going to fault a kid for having self-confidence.
No, not at all.
Absolutely not. The problem is that self-confidence is used against him. So it's just, it feels like in a lot of ways, Shedeur Sanders is in a no-win situation. And we can argue about his capability of being an NFL quarterback. Just based on the tape, we can have arguments about, is he really worth a first-round pick or an early first-round pick? You could make the case he's not. But it's the personality, the coach prime of it all on top of that, that just is, he is, and I truly believe this, he is in a no-win situation. He's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't.
I would also add this: the person, the unnamed person that Josina Anderson is bringing to light. I feel like that guy is out there every year.
Yeah,
because there's a motive. I really don't think people go out there and try to sink a player because he doesn't like that player. I think it's all tactical. It's all that's my belief anyway. I mean, maybe he's a jerk. Maybe this guy is just, he hates the Sanders family. He's got a vendetta. Maybe Dion beat him on a
crossing route
something. I don't know.
Shut him down.
Maybe he was mean to him or something, and like, oh, I'll get him back. I think it's much more likely that this is a tactical. Let's get this out there, so maybe he falls, and maybe we get the Aaron Rodgers kind of thing where a guy free falls in the draft, and a team that didn't expect to have one of the best quarterbacks available when they pick might be there.
Yeah, I just, whether it's true or not, I would be leaning more so that it's not, because what is the benefit of putting that information out there? Because if I feel that way about a potential draftee, and I go into the room and he displays these things, I'm like, all right, I'm taking him off my draft board, but I'm not going to give anybody else a heads up. They want to draft him, and that's their business, but I'm not putting that out there, because if I think this is who he's going to be, yeah, I want you to draft him, because we got to go against you twice a year, or we got to go against you once a year. So go ahead and draft him. I don't care, but I wouldn't, the information doesn't do anything for me unless two things. Either you're trying to position yourself to eventually draft him, and I think we've seen that before, or you just don't like the kid, and you like, I don't care that he's gonna fall. I'm just gonna put that out. So either way, but my thing is, if indeed whether you want to be there or you feel that team is going to draft you or not going to draft you, you should always go into the meeting with a certain level of professionalism, even though this group of athlete, whether it be man or woman, they've changed dramatically in regards to their how they present themselves and their interaction with people. It's a little bit more laid back in a sense. Not that they don't care, but it's just a little bit more laid back. Why? Because they're so inundated with so much anyway, interviews here, that they become desensitized to, like, when I came out, it was exciting to go meet with a GM. It was exciting to sit in front of, an owner or a scout and listen to him talk about what he likes about you and how you can. That was exciting. Why? Because back then, social media, we didn't get a chance to do that. Now these kids get a chance to do it. That's all they hear every week is somebody on saying this GM think this about them, or this GM or this team wants to. They hear all of this. So when they get into these meetings, they're desensitized. They're like, I heard everything, basically, what people are saying about this organization in regards to me. I've heard it all. So the athlete is just a lot different in regards to, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying they're different in regards to how they present themselves nowadays.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the conjecture surrounding Shedeur Sanders, Todd McShay, reporting that teams seem to be turned off by his presence in meetings. Josina Anderson had I hesitate to call it a report about a quarterback coach who referred to him as brash and arrogant. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Tune in later today to 94.9 The Fan for Vanderbilt baseball as the Commodores host St. Bonaventure. The Fighting Jerry Helpers.
It's so funny you just did that. I just got a text from Jerry saying the Bonnies are in town, baby.
Hi,
Is what he
Jerry. If
said.
you're
Hey,
listening.
Jerry.
Pre-game begins at 4:15 and first pitch is at 4:30 p.m. It could also be the Fighting Adrian Wojnarowski's too, right?
Yeah.
Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at theGameNashville.com. So we're talking Shedeur Sanders. So I saw this story on The Athletic from Ted Wynn, who does really good film studies of NFL and college players. And he did one recently on Shedeur Sanders. And here are some of the bullet points for Shedeur Sanders as a football player, just solely as a football player. According to Ted Wynn, his biggest strength is accuracy. I think we would all know that. But Ted Wynn also mentions that he's not accurate enough, ironically. He writes, Joe Montana made a weaker arm work, but as Ted explains, Sanders' passes aren't pinpoint enough to compensate for a lack of arm strength. Quote, he's an accurate passer, but that accuracy isn't elite, and it gets severely affected when he's pressured. If he doesn't have a solid base, he doesn't generate enough power to throw consistently off platform. He's a strong processor, but not yet strong enough. It also notes that Shedeur Sanders rarely completes tight window throws and has poor pocket presence. And here's where it gets interesting. The best comp for Shedeur Sanders. If Sanders improves in those areas, he becomes a healthy version of Chad Pennington, who retired as the NFL's all-time leader in completion percentage after a 10-year career, or a Brock Purdy type thriving in the right system. Worst case scenario, the college completion percentage leaders leaderboard is littered with warning signs. Mac Jones, Colt McCoy, Zach Wilson, and even the Athletics' own Chase Daniel had college seasons with completion percentages of 70 plus. All were strong QB2s in the NFL. None were worth first round picks.
Who who said this again?
Ted Wynn, who does film studies for The Athletic. Very good.
He does do very thorough research. I will give him that. When he makes his case, he puts a lot into it. It's not a flippant take, if you will. It's not a hot take. It's a researched take, whether he's right or wrong. I mean, nobody's right 100% of the time. And guys who do give the hot takes will stumble upon being right some of the time.
I look at it from this standpoint. And again, maybe I need to go back and watch Shedeur Sanders again and identify what I'm truly looking for. Because what I've seen is he does have hell of a pocket presence. I thought that was one of his best attributes, was with an offensive line that was horrendous last year. They were much better this season. But last year, that offensive line was horrendous. He had to navigate through all of that. I understand that how many quarterbacks are throwing into double coverage in college? How many? Not many. That's why
it tends to be guys on bad teams.
Absolutely. When the quarterback, this is why, because I could have said that for Joe Burrow, because he didn't have to make any tight throws.
No, Joe Burrow had an absolutely loaded
roster. But Joe
around
Burrow's
him.
great.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that Joe Burrow didn't have to make tight the throws. His guys would be running wide open. There were a lot of quarterbacks that, majority of the quarterbacks in today's college football, they don't have to make tight throws because the game is so wide open and the competition is so unbalanced that very seldom are you going to have to make that tight window throw. But when it's there to be had, you got to. And I've seen him several times throughout the course of the year make tight window throws, pinpoint throws.
Here's what Ted Wynn said about his poor pocket presence. When watching tape, Sanders impressed me with his willingness to absorb a hit, if that's what it took to get a pass out. Unfortunately, playing behind Colorado's poor line led to him often bailing too early. Sanders also rarely threw the ball beyond the line of scrimmage, ranking as the 112th quarterback in air yards per throw among qualifying passers, and played in a relatively limited scheme. Throwing at the Shrine Bowl.
That's every college, just about every college quarterback.
But if he ranks 112th, that surprises me with my eye test, because my eye test lines up exactly with the poor offensive line play.
Exactly.
That's like the first thing you notice when you watch Colorado.
So okay, when you
But the air yards, that
she-
surprises
and
me.
he should know this. When you're playing with because this is what the Titans were trying to do with Will Levis. When you're playing behind a poor offensive line, what is your main objective? What is your sort of kryptonite to that? Get rid of the ball
Get
early.
the ball out quick.
Out quick. It may be a 2-yard pass that then takes it to, 15, 20. That's college football when you don't have an offensive line. We look up the street at UT. That's all they did 2 years ago was throw these hitches and quick seams and not too far down the line, because what we're doing as a collegiate, as a sport, a sport in college in regards to football, what they're doing is they're spreading the field and they're opening you up. And they're throwing a lot of these quick screens and 2-yard passes. Because why? Because I've spread you out, I want to get you on a one-on-one matchup. I think my guy is quicker and faster than your guy that's guarding me. So I'm going to give him the ball quickly and let him make his moves. A lot of offenses employ that type of attack, especially when you don't have an offensive line. So again, he may be right, but you got to take into the fact that the offensive line was horrible. The scheme was from an offensive coordinator that was in the NFL. He was a head coach in the NFL. So he brought that scheme over. He enhanced it more to suit the college level. And they ran the offense just like Chip Kelly ran his offense, spread out. Just like UT's coach, why am I forgetting his name? Heupel runs his offense. So now all of a sudden, it's a problem with Shedeur, but it wasn't a problem with other guys. I think it's a problem across the board with offense.
Here's more from Ted Wynn at The Athletic. Quote, "It's a credit to Sanders that he's improved in the pocket, though we can't yet call it a strength. There were too many instances in which he bailed out of clean pockets. There's hope he can continue his improvement in this area, but the team that drafts him must have a strong offensive line or risk him creating bad habits. Because of Sanders' limited physical traits, the bet for the team that drafts him is that he becomes so adept at the mental side of the game that he can overcome his weaknesses and continually beat teams with his brains. Again, Sanders reads defenses at a relatively high level, but it's not at the level one would hope for a quarterback who needs to be an ace in that area."
He's on one hand he's saying this, but on the other hand it's sort of hypocritical. He has great pocket. Well, he's a great processor. He's a really good processor, but he has to do this. He's really good at holding on to the ball to get that ball out, and he's not scared of taking that hit, but he bails out sometimes a little bit too soon. Well, sometimes you have to bail out when your offensive line is horrid. When you start hearing those people around your feet, sometimes you're going to stand in the pocket. And he praised him for doing that. But then he also said, well, he leaves the pocket early. Those two things can't live in the same world. Either he stands in the pocket and absorbs that hit, as we talk about with a lot of NFL quarterbacks. We praise NFL quarterbacks when they're able to stand in the pocket and deliver a ball 10, 15 yards down the field when a guy is barreling in on them. We praise that. But now all of a sudden it's a weakness. Those things, on one hand, you're talking about this, but then on the other hand, you're contradicting what you just said.
One texter says the report from Todd McShay and Josina Anderson is only a big deal because he's Deion's kid. Nobody was up in arms when people questioned Will Levis. It happens every year, but people only question the coach this year because he's a Sanders.
I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like every year stories like this
It's
pop
one
up on
or
certain
two,
guys.
yeah.
I don't think
Whether it be that specific thing or some other flaw that people see. Like last year, 2 years ago, the whole thing about Stroud and the
S2.
S2 that became everything. I haven't heard a single thing about S2 this year. I'm sure it'll come back into the conversation, but that was such a heavily discussed thing.
I don't think it's going to come up anymore because of what CJ Stroud
honestly,
did.
It probably changed a lot of people. I think it was sort of the cutting edge, on the rise kind of thing. I think people still believe that there's a lot of value in the S2, but I think for us people from 50,000 feet view, we're like, oh, that S2, that didn't work so well for Stroud. Like that's the narrative, and you kind of write off everything.
He seemed to turn out okay. following the
Right.
the
That's
S2
right.
Everybody
issues.
remembers that awkward
Alleged
interview he did when
issues.
he was asked about it. He goes, I don't really think that that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And he
made it.
his play
Exactly.
has dictated that.
Willie, I think you brought up the Aaron Rodgers draft fall from several years ago, and I think that's what we're going to see here. I mean, I don't think that Shador Sanders is a bad quarterback. I think he is a limited quarterback. I certainly don't think he is. I don't. It seems like he may not be deserving of being a top pick or a top 5 pick or even a top 10 pick. I think we could see Shador Sanders fall into the late first round, and that's going to be just like Aaron Rodgers. Those cameras at the NFL draft, every time his name isn't called, they're going to zoom in on Shador Sanders unless he's somewhere else. He might be doing it somewhere else, but there will be plenty of talk about Shador Sanders if he falls in the draft.
When you have a big name and everybody knows about you, there's more discussed about you. I think it could go either direction. I think he could rise back up and be picked surprisingly high, and I think he could even go lower than what you're saying, Adam. I think he could drop out of the first round. But here are a couple examples of where guys got higher. I think there were people that did not have Johnny Manziel anywhere near the first round, and yet the Browns took him, right? In that 30 for 30, that was well discussed, right? How that was a lot of teams saw his flaws and said, man, this guy is really going to struggle at the next level. He's not going to be able to do it the way he did it in college. And they were right. The Browns were the one team said, he's got that magic touch. He's got that thing. He's got that trait. Let's take him. Who else did that happen with? Tim Tebow. We talked about, I remember Gary Danielson very vividly while he was still at Florida talking about the extra arm motion that he took, that he wound up a little bit more than most pro quarterbacks, the opposite of a Dan Marino, where you used to always, when I was growing up, saying you got to take it from your ear. Throw it from your ear like Dan Marino. Don't rear back, And, everybody throws a little bit different, but you could see what Danielson was talking about. He kind of would drop down like a pitcher, and it took a little extra. That didn't stop the Broncos from taking him in the first round, right? Because they bought into his thing. And we saw what happened, right? You got mixed results. Sanders could be that guy, and he could be a guy that ends up being just fine and play great quarterback.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on Shador Sanders. Coming up next, an interesting article from a couple of days ago on ESPN ranking Shador Sanders and Cam Ward against other first-round quarterback draft prospects in recent years. We'll get to that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Charlie is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Charlie, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, Willie, thank you. No, either them people are telling the truth, or you talking about Shedeur Sanders, them whichever team they was talking about was telling the truth, because if they told that lie on him and he dropped down to them and cost him all that money, they would start off, in a fight. He wouldn't want to be there unless he was in on it with them, unless he wanted to drop to a certain team, say it's the Raiders, and they said, look, we're going to tell this stuff on you, that way you'll fall to us, and he's fine with it. But I don't think a team would just go out there and say that, hoping they'd fall, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you for the call, Charlie. I understand what Charlie's getting at. And at this point of the NFL calendar, it's perfect for conspiracy theories, right? This idea that, hey, we're gonna plant a story that makes you seem bad so that you'll drop to us and we'll win and everybody will be happy. Like this is the perfect breeding ground. This time of the NFL calendar is the perfect breeding ground for conspiracy theories and such.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it can go the other way too, is my point. Like with Tebow, like people were shredding Tebow's mechanics and all of this stuff, and he still got picked in the first round. So it can go both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gone the other way where a guy falls and ends up being a really good pro. I remember people picked apart a lot about Kyler Murray because he was so unique. I remember more than one person said, I don't really have a first round grade on this guy just because there have been so few quarterbacks through history that had his metrics. He was one of a kind, truly, right? Murray.
Yeah, no,
there
you're
had never
right.
been a quarterback like him before, not even a Doug Flutie, right? He would be the only guy that would even come up in a lot of cases, and Manziel, and guys like that. And they were like, okay, what's the history of guys his size being worth the first pick in the draft? But you know what? He ended up being the first pick in the draft. Yeah, and he's done all right. He's not lit the world on fire, but he's been good.
Yeah, it's just you wonder, like, and some of this stuff, listen, some of it I'm sure is valid. I get it. But you never know, like, what is the person's motive for doing that? Are they trying to position themselves to move up to draft the guy, or are they just selling? Listen, buyers beware. I'm just letting y'all know in advance. This whoever the said guy or girl is, this is how we perceive them to be. This is how they approached us during the meetings. So, if indeed, because I'm not going to say that that's not the case, like it definitely didn't happen, but I'm not going to sit here and run with the premise that, it did happen, and this and that. What I'm going to say is, listen, if it did happen, then Shedeur Sanders should be held accountable for that. He should know better, considering his dad has been through all that stuff. So he should know better whether you want the team to draft you or not. You should always go in there with a certain level of decorum and express yourself and explain yourself in a professional way, because this is what it is, a job interview. But I do know also that some of this stuff comes out and it's strategic, and it's done not for the benefit of the player, but for the benefit of you. You're saying that so it could then benefit you. So if it happened, it shouldn't have happened. But if it didn't happen, shame on that person for putting it out there, regardless of what advantage you may get.
So Matt Miller at ESPN.com, one of their top NFL draft analysts, had this story late last week, ranking the recent first-round quarterbacks versus the 2025 prospects. So he took all of the first-round quarterbacks drafted since 2020 and ranked them, and then threw in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders to see where they rank on their list. So according to Matt Miller, his top prospect in terms of his grade was Caleb Williams in 2024. Cam Ward, out of 21 quarterbacks, comes in at number 18, ahead of Michael Penix at 19, Shedeur Sanders at 20, and Kenny Pickett at 2021. This is in terms of how he graded those
Okay.
quarterbacks.
Mhm.
I think that is something that, regardless of whether you believe that this is accurate,
Mhm.
I think every team should have that perspective. Now, what makes it tough probably is the Titans have had some change in personnel of people doing the evaluation, but I think that is relative. That is relevant material. Is how does this guy grade compared to all of the quarterbacks we've
Mhm.
graded?
Yeah, ultimately that's what it ended up being. You know, with each individual team, you know, how does our grading line up with where we feel this player should be or shouldn't be? If we've evaluated all these quarterbacks, then where does he fall in that slot? And I think every team is not going to be the same.
I should clarify, by the way,
Mhm.
that this story from Matt Miller, he polled NFL scouts, decision makers, and analysts to help
Mhm.
build the list, and pre-draft grades were the only consideration.
Yeah, and again, you know, I guarantee you, if he was to then go now after the combine, or after some of these pro days, I'm sure it would probably change in how they grade these individuals. I'm sure a guy like Matthew Golden, when they graded him at first, his grade, you know, if you graded him now, you know, before the combine, I'm sure he shot up a lot of people's draft board after the combine. I'm sure either it will continue to go up or it will level out once he have his pro day. So I think every stage there's going to be a reevaluation
I agree.
of each one of these players.
There's still a lot of evaluation that hasn't taken place yet.
Even Cam Ward, who may end up being a number one pick. Well, some people, after a little bit more evaluating and talking with them, they may lower him to 2 or 3 on their draft board.
So the top quarterback prospects, according to Matt Miller and those he polled, Caleb Williams was number 1 in 2024.
Mhm.
Trevor Lawrence was number 2 in 2021. Number 3, Joe Burrow in 2020. 4, Jaden Daniels in 2024. And Drake May, number 5 in 2024. Those were the top 5. So based on
were they drafting, were they evaluating quarterbacks or just they hold?
So
like the whole
Matt
draft?
Miller polled NFL scouts, decision makers, and analysts to help build this list, and pre-draft grades were the only consideration. So based on pre-draft grades from Matt Miller's sources, this is how they rank.
Okay.
So Caleb Williams.
What's the time span again?
Since 2020.
Since 2020.
So Caleb
2020
Williams.
is a tough evaluation, right? That
Yeah, because of
evaluation was different. Right.
Yeah, it was a lot different from what it is
Yes.
now.
So Caleb Williams' pre-draft grade of all of the quarterbacks
Was the
taken
highest.
in 2020 since 2020 in the first round was the highest.
Okay, and he was the
Number one pick to the Bears.
Right.
And who came out?
So
Burrow's
what's
year?
go with the ranks? So
Who came
it
out
was
Burrow's
Williams
year?
and then who?
Williams was 1.
Uh-huh.
Trevor Lawrence was 2. Joe Burrow was 3. Jaden Daniels was 4. Drake May was 5.
Drake May 5.
Yes. Tua was 6. Justin Herbert 7. Bryce Young 8. Zach Wilson 9. CJ Stroud 10.
Wow, I think out of all those quarterbacks, with the exception of, if I'm hearing it right, with the exception of Zach Wilson, and who else is on there, they've had relative success, right?
Well, you've got 3.
I'd say Zach Wilson is the biggest dud.
Yeah, he's
in
the
there.
biggest.
Yes,
yeah.
of the top 10.
By
Absolutely.
by far.
10.
And then is there any other? All of them have had
Yeah, they've
reasonable
had-
success
yeah.
so far, or the jury's still out.
And then Caleb Williams, I mean, his team, he
Yeah.
had some success, but he also did struggle.
Sure.
Yes. So Cam Ward was 18th on this list. Shador Sanders was 20.
Okay, so keep just list them after.
So that I read you the top.
between, yeah.
All right. So I read you the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
11, JJ McCarthy. 12, Trey Lance. 13, Anthony Richardson. 14, Justin Fields. Mac Jones, 15th. Jordan Love, 16th. Bo Nix, 17th. Cam Ward, 18th. Michael Penix, 19th. Shador Sanders, 20th. Kenny Pickett, 21st.
Kenny Pickett. Okay.
So
it's intriguing.
Yeah.
So that's 5 years of quarterback evaluation at a consensus of people that do this for a living.
yes. 615-737-1025. A crazy night in the SEC, as per usual. We'll get into that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, the game. D. Mace Finnegan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Chris Mason, Predators TV analyst, will join us in the next segment. Predators win last night in Boston. The NHL trade deadline is Friday. So we'll get into all of that with Chris Mason shortly. Before we get to our next topic, some other breaking news in the NFL. The Las Vegas Raiders are signing Max Crosby to a 3-year, $106.5 million extension that includes $91.5 million guaranteed, making him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. That according to Adam Schefter.
Well, good for him. I mean, he's one of the premier pass rushers in the National Football League. I think he's had double digits or close to 20 sacks over no, that's the kid out of Cincinnati. But Max Crosby that's Hendrickson. But Max Crosby has been, or it could have been Max Crosby. I get the two mixed up. But Max Crosby has been one of the most dominant rush ends in the National Football League. So good for him. They had to sign him back because they don't have, many star power defensive guys on their team, and Max Crosby is one of them. They have a young secondary that's pretty good, but I think they're helped because of Max Crosby's ability to get to the quarterback.
So a lot of interesting stuff happened last night in the SEC. We'll start with a major upset. Texas A&M, which had been struggling lately, had plummeted down the top 25. They had lost 4 games in a row to Mississippi State, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Florida. They beat Auburn last night, handing number 1 Auburn its 3rd loss of the season. So Texas A&M, after sliding basically almost out of the top 25, takes down Auburn on their senior night. Locally, Vanderbilt, their winning streak came to an end in a loss to Arkansas at Memorial Gym. Arkansas wins 90-77. So despite the good vibes from Vanderbilt, Willie, over the past few games, they're probably in a good spot for the NCAA tournament, but Arkansas needed that win to keep themselves in the running for a tournament spot, and they get it at Memorial Gym 90-77.
I think I set the table. Coach Willie,
you got
to give Coach Willie credit on that one. I set the table. Where the urgency wasn't going to be there for Vanderbilt naturally, because I think there was a sigh of relief. Everybody around the country saying, wow, 3 straight wins against top 25, 1 on the road, you're in. And here's Arkansas having just been embarrassed at South Carolina, playing without one of their best players. Mm-hmm. It was the classic letdown for Vanderbilt. But let's give Arkansas credit. That's a talented team. And I think on top of that, it's a bad matchup for Vanderbilt. I was able to watch the first half before we took off from Boston to come back here. And I thought at halftime, I said, I don't like where this is going. And the reason was, and John Sunvold, who did the color commentary for SEC Network, I think really was hitting on it throughout the half. Vanderbilt was just having a lot of trouble getting quality looks like they normally do. They exploited Missouri and a lot of teams they play with great switching back cuts. They score more points in the paint than you would think for a team that's undersized, but not last night. Arkansas, who is a great shot blocking team with length, they made it very tough. And Vanderbilt usually doesn't turn the ball over very much. Mm-hmm. They were turning turnovers into fast break opportunities. That was a dunk show last night by Arkansas. Did you see some of the dunks they had?
Yeah. Big Z had, it looked like he was just, you just put the ball anywhere and he could dunk it.
Yeah.
It's insane.
He's like the kid on the Nerf goal, right? Mm-hmm. He's 7'2", and he can shoot from the outside. But the guy that was unreal was Brazil. Right,
Brazil, he was really good.
Oh my goodness, he had a couple of dunks where everybody in the gym had to just gasp and say, "What just happened there?" Like a windmill, like as if you were could take a running start.
A tomahawk dunk, it was just insane.
It was nasty, and so hats off to Arkansas. And I I do think that was a team that did a good job of exploiting Vanderbilt's weaknesses more. So, and I don't think you got Vanderbilt fully in the fight, which I think that's maybe the lesson they learned from last night is they're not going to out-talent anybody. They were predicted 16th in the league. They are not loaded with future NBA stars. They have to have everything at the table to win. And so when they don't have that edge, that eye of the tiger, they get beat. And they got another tough one at Georgia. I think they're going to be in regardless. I wouldn't worry, but I do think that they have to know that they can't bring less than their best effort to survive in this league.
Arkansas is such an interesting team to me because of the John Calipari of it all.
Right.
The win last night put Arkansas right at 49% on ESPN's Bubble Watch. They went from below 40% to back around 50-50. And considering the depth of the SEC and John Calipari's exit from Kentucky and what he was hoping to build at Arkansas, it's just a really intriguing story to me. Like, their final game of the regular season, they host Mississippi State on Saturday. They need to win that game and then probably win. How many do you think in the SEC tournament? 2 games at least?
Well,
Arkansas?
Okay. The SEC tournament, the thing that works to their advantage in that is because a win, right? If you beat, like, for example, the Lady Vols right now are getting a win in the SEC tournament, but they're playing one of the lowest, maybe the lowest seed, just because of the way the tournament is bracketed. That doesn't do anything to move the needle, right? When you beat a team that's a bottom feeder, that doesn't really do anything for the committee. But you have opportunities in this league to get another win that means something, a quad 1 win or something like that. To me, that's what you're looking for. So when you say they need to win 1 or 2, I think you're really saying, are you beating another possible tournament team? Are you putting another quality win in there where the committee's like, hey, they just beat so-and-so?
Well, the good part about it is,
and in the SEC, you got a lot of chances for those teams.
And that's the good
because there's
part
only a couple
exactly.
teams. Like, if I don't know how the draw is going to go, but if Arkansas beats South Carolina in the first round, that's really not going to, the committee's barely going to pay attention.
Which they wouldn't play LSU, but a team like LSU, the good part about it and the bad part is the bad part is you're going against, it seemed like night in and night out, you're going against a top 25 opponent. That's the bad part about it. The good part is you're going against top 25 opponents, and that can help you out if you win those games.
So, by the way, based on the standings of the SEC right now, Arkansas would be the 11th seed in the SEC tournament, facing Oklahoma in the opening round of the SEC tournament.
See, that bodes well probably for an Arkansas
and if
team.
they win, they would face Texas A&M in the next round. Arkansas.
I would love to see that matchup because
Texas A&M and Arkansas.
Yeah, because Arkansas I think Arkansas is gonna, if everybody is coming back, majority of these guys are coming back, and then obviously we know Coach Cal can recruit. This is going to be a much different team next year. I think this team is going to be competing for the SEC title next year. But this year they have the talent, but it doesn't, just for whatever reason, it hadn't come together. It's starting to come together now.
Remember, they were 0-5.
Yeah, they were 0-5, and it was like, man, they were bad. But now they picked things up, and they put themselves in a position now where they're fighting for that last 4 in into the tournament. So when you look at
and Mississippi State
Arkansas,
has sagged some very quietly. They're at 8 and 9. And they've been viewed as in for a long time.
But
so
then again,
that's a winnable game for Arkansas, I think.
Yeah, still a winnable, and it would help. I think it would help Arkansas more than it would hurt Mississippi State. But if you look, I watched this game yesterday, Arkansas and Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt looked as if 2 things were happening, and we talked about this, Willie, off air. They're in. Whew. A sign of relief, but they also look like a tired team too. And it looked like that before. But if you just look at the box scores, they shot really well from the 3-point line.
Yeah, Vanderbilt hit
shot
10
40
threes
yeah,
and
they
still was
shot
nowhere near winning the game.
40% from the 3-point line. They shot 38% from the field. That's what
Right.
got them.
From
Because
from
they got
two,
out.
they struggled.
They got out rebounded. What was it? 40. It was at least defense. They're getting offensive rebounds.
42,
They got
31.
12. They got 12 offensive rebounds, and then in total, it was 42 rebounds compared to 31 rebounds. And majority of those were on the offensive end, like getting your offensive rebound. Vandy, and this is what's going to happen to Vandy, I believe, a lot, because they're undersized. When they play a team that is long and athletic, i.e. Auburn, teams like that, they're going to have difficulties with getting rebounds and not allowing the other team to get offensive rebounds. Arkansas, because of their athleticism, they were able to get offensive rebounds. And that's what ultimately beat Vanderbilt. Because if you look at all the metrics, the numbers, you would think, okay, like Vandy, this was a closer game than what the score actually says.
Yeah, and I think Arkansas can be a little up and down offensively, but last night they really attacked the basket. I was impressed with how they went about it. They were hungry, they were desperate. Vanderbilt not as much. And I just think sometimes in an 18-game slugfest in this league, let's take Auburn and let's take Texas A&M. Texas A&M went through their rough period, right? As Adam mentioned, they've lost 4 in a row. None of them to bad teams. They were all good teams. But now they're a little bit more desperate to rebound. They catch Auburn. Maybe Auburn isn't quite as hungry. Everybody around the country say, well, they got the championship.
Yes.
They're the number 1 overall seed no matter what. Okay, that's a perfect time to get beat. So everybody's human, and this league is so tough. I think the question is everybody, are they going to let everybody in besides LSU and South Carolina, or will there be one team that gets squeezed? And you mentioned an intriguing one. If the draw stays that way, Oklahoma versus Arkansas in the first game, there was a time that I thought the committee would watch a game like that and say, okay, winners in, losers out. That's a bubble game right there. But I think now it's so computerized, and they are so bent on saying it doesn't matter what your league record is. It doesn't matter how many teams we're letting in from the same league. It's all about the net and all of these things. And I kind of don't like that. I wish there was a little bit more of an eye test, human element. How's a team playing? They seem to throw all of that out. So I don't know if that would have everything. But is there a scenario where they get 14? Like, who would be the 14th team? That's what you don't want to be.
Man.
You don't want to be in that slot on the ladder.
The 14th team that will get into the big dance.
Right. Because really, when you look at it, there's only 2 teams in the SEC that are completely out of it unless they make a miracle run in the tournament.
LSU is completely out of it.
LSU and South Carolina.
Yeah, LSU and South Carolina.
Well, Texas had a big win last night.
Yeah, Texas.
Right.
Which makes me think it's
Texas
Oklahoma,
stayed alive.
Which makes me think it's Oklahoma.
Oklahoma
right
is 4-12 in the league. But if people still have them on the radar, and if they win 2 more, like, let's see, Oklahoma's got Missouri on Wednesday, and that's at home. Oklahoma could win that game. And then they've got Texas on the road. So I would think Oklahoma and Texas are the 2 that are probably that could be a huge game. Oklahoma, Texas, the last game.
Right now in Joe Lunardi bracketology, Oklahoma is the first team out.
So despite being 4-12 in the league,
out.
Can you imagine being 4-12 in your league and you're still right there on the bubble? That's
crazy.
Oklahoma.
But that shows you, excuse me, that shows you the depth. That shows you how good your conference is from top to bottom.
They had some great non-conference wins early in the year, which is the reason why they're still holding to that, because the committee doesn't weigh how you're playing at the end of the season any differently than they do how you played at the beginning of the season.
There are a total of, I'm looking at, last 4 buys in Leonardo's on the bubble. you got a SEC team in Georgia. We just talked about Georgia. Last 4 in is Arkansas. And then the first 4 out, you got Oklahoma and Texas. And then next 4 out, there's nobody from the SEC. But just in those two, you see how razor thin that line is for the SEC. So they could get 14
I think
teams
that was
in.
the significance of Vanderbilt beating Texas A&M on the road and then following that up with the Missouri win, because I think that put them above that group of teams. And even if they lose to Georgia, I still think they will be above the fray. In my estimation, I think tons. You can't control what happens around the bubble. Things can change, but I think the overwhelming probability is that Vanderbilt is a lock, even if they were to lose the last 2.
A huge game tonight in the SEC. Number 5, Florida, at number 7, Alabama. Although Auburn slipped up last night, they don't have anything to worry about. They're going to be a number 1 seed. Whether they're the number 1 overall seed, we'll see. But they're comfortably on the 1 line. There's no drama there. Duke is probably on the 1 line, and it seems that Houston is making moves and could be on the 1 line, which leaves one number 1 spot for 3 SEC teams, Tennessee, Florida, and Alabama, 2 of which play each other tonight. Huge game in Tuscaloosa.
And then Alabama finishes with Auburn.
Yes.
At Auburn. So 2 really giant games for the Crimson Tide. And you win them both. Boy, that's going to get number 1 seed talk going, wouldn't it?
And then you just have to play the SEC tournament. Imagine if you're Alabama, you have to play Florida, you have to play Auburn, and then you have to go to the SEC tournament.
It just seems like in recent years, you guys tell me, I feel like the committee has most of the hay in the barn before the conference tournament start. I don't think they swing seeds big one way or the other and say, okay, the first seed is on the line in the SEC tournament. But if there's a year that you would do that to split hairs, maybe it's this year, where we know Auburn, regardless, is a 1. But could they say, all right, let's see how it shakes out between Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee in Nashville? And if one of those 3 teams does way better than the others and has impressive wins or beats the other, that might be what decides who's the 1 seed.
Yeah, I think
that makes sense to me. That's a logic thing to me.
It makes the most sense just because.
But everybody wants to tell you about the computers and the quad 1s and the quad 2s. I don't like that. I like when you have a little bit more of that. You know, let's watch him play. Let's do the eye test. Let's reward what we're seeing, and not just, well, the KenPom is now 36.235, and their strength of schedule just went up from 32 to 29, so that puts them ahead. Like, they like to not emphasize head to head.
Are you doing an impression of me?
I'm doing an impression of people on the committee. I don't like that. Like, I like CM Newton people on the committee, coaches, and athletic directors who maybe used to be coaches. Now it's just like, I think it's too easy to take your laptop out and look. Hey, let's look at the net rankings, and they moved up. I just think they're leaning on that a little too much. Am I jaded from 2 years ago? Big time. That's when I learned my lesson, because I went on Robbie and Rexroad's show. I gave a passionate case for Vanderbilt, and I did all the numbers. And I used all of the metrics, because the one weakness that Vanderbilt had at that time was the net. It was way below everybody else in the bubble. But I was like, if you look past that, who they've beaten, who they've played, where they played, they beat out a bunch of other teams that made it over them. And Vanderbilt wasn't even in the first 4 out when the show came open, because I said, look, they should be in. And Joe was like, hey, I'm telling you, I saw the committee. I heard what the committee had to say, and they're going hard on these net. And I didn't want to believe it, but that's when I became jaded.
I'm curious how Alabama responds coming off of the loss to Tennessee, where a lot went wrong for them at the end of that game. A lot of self-inflicted errors in that game, particularly the 5-second call on the out of bounds.
Right. So they probably, with 30 seconds left, had about a 9. If you go to by KenPom, they track, right? And it doesn't matter until it's 100, but their win probability was 90% at one point in the final minute of the game. So they had the game in their hands. It took a lot for Tennessee to steal it from them.
I think if Alabama loses this game, I think they're out of the running for a 1 seed. I think it's up to
Oh,
them
yeah.
to win this game to keep it. Otherwise, I think it's down
What if they
to,
won at Auburn though?
No,
Oh, well, yeah.
And then string together some wins in the SEC tournament. See, I
yeah,
think
I'm thinking it
that's what
wouldn't
I'm
take,
looking
I
for
hear
in the
what you're
it
saying.
committee,
wouldn't take
but
them
I don't know what the
completely
numbers
out
will
of
say.
it, because if they come back and they say they win the SEC tournament, I think you gotta put them in. I think if you had them as a sort of fringe number one, and then they go and they win the SEC tournament, which is the best conference out there right now, wouldn't you have to almost put them number one if they were like unless the team they were competing with, which is usually another SEC team, unless he's outside, they're outside of the conference. If they're competing with that team and that team wins his conference title, then okay. But outside of that, I think even if Alabama loses, they still got a shot at getting the number one seed.
Now, Tennessee's got an interesting one tonight too. This is again, you got to take on all comers.
Mhm.
They play at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is really good, right? On especially down there, they're going to have it rocking. Tennessee is going to take Ole Miss's best punch tonight. Around the country, if they were to win that game, I don't think that's got everybody from an eyeball test going, "Wow, Tennessee, that's a seed. That's got to get them
A number
attention
one
in the one
seed,
seed."
yeah.
But I don't know what the line is on the game tonight, but Ole Miss is gonna come in there strong.
I think the only way
Tennessee
if
minus
Alabama-
2.5.
Okay, if Alabama loses,
Tennessee's favored on the road, but Ole Miss,
it's a good
they're
chance, yeah.
gonna bring it.
If Alabama loses, Tennessee, if they beat Ole Miss or they lose at Ole Miss, I think they say if they beat Ole Miss and they finish out the season on a winning note, for them and Alabama, I think they would almost have to win the SEC champion. To me, they would have to win the SEC championship in order to get a number one seed. Because right now, Auburn, Houston, and Duke, and now who's that fourth seed? So anything short of UT or Alabama winning the SEC tournament, I think both of them are 2 seed.
615-737-1025. Tennessee favored by 2.5 points on the road at Ole Miss. Missouri, a 5.5 point favorite on the road at Oklahoma. Alabama, a 3.5 point favorite at home against Florida. 615-737-1025. Chris Mason, Predators television analyst, will join us next as we turn our attention toward the NHL trade deadline on Friday. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game.
Dramatic pause. All right, let's tell you about Loan Pronto. Here we go with Loan Pronto's bread and butter that I keep talking about to you week in, week out, year in, year out. It is a really good system for those that are looking for cash to address a financial need. Maybe it's time to upgrade your house. Maybe it's time to upgrade your kitchen, a bathroom, something that's a little worn down, and you need some cash to address it. You want to make your home more valuable. Well, Loan Pronto has the engine to do that. They're the leader in quickly converting home equity into cold, hard cash, so you can address that need. You can make that home remodeled and more valuable. And then you'll eventually have more home equity. And that is a great cycle because the average homeowner has thousands of dollars in equity, and that's your money. You use it wisely. So call Loan Pronto and get them started. You can get approved for this loan in as little as 1 day with no hard credit pull, no paperwork, no cumbersome process, no junk fees. Call Loan Pronto now, 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780 or go to loanpronto.com. Get the money you need. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. The Nashville Predators win last night 6-3 against the Boston Bruins. They are back at home tomorrow against the Seattle Kraken. And joining us on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, Predators television analyst Chris Mason. Chris, let's start by going back to the weekend. The first domino fell for the Nashville Predators at the trade deadline. They traded Gus Nyquist to the Minnesota Wild for a second-round pick, which surprised me, to be honest with you. What did you make of that transaction? Were you surprised that Gus Nyquist, considering the season he's had, fetched the Predators a second-round pick?
No, because they retain half the salary. So I think anytime I think sometimes when you see trades and you think of the player necessarily, it's not always the whole equation. I think you're seeing a lot of players that when you're able to help out and absorb some of the cap hit, it allows the team obviously to get that player. So I think the team, that's getting the player has to give up a higher draft pick. If it were a situation where, Minnesota, there's rumors out there, they're trying to find another partner so that to take some of that cap hit, if there were that, they would have to get some compensation out of it for taking that cap hit. So no, it didn't surprise me because that's a team that's familiar with Gus Nyquist. He went in, had a decent, Four Nations tournament. So I think with his track record, you know what you're getting out of Gus Nyquist. And this year was obviously a down year, but there's scouts at every single game and they know him well. So that didn't surprise me, especially because of some of the salary retention.
So if you were advising the remaining players on the Nashville Predators roster, the trade deadline is Friday afternoon, who would you go up to and say, hey, man, you might just want to have a getaway bag packed just in case?
A getaway bag. That's nice. No, I mean, you look at guys that could help. If you look at some teams, you just saw New Jersey. Obviously, he was getting hurt. They have to address maybe something else as well. But that's a team they got a really good hockey team, but they don't really have any toughness. Their depth is a little thin at the bottom. They've got a lot of high end, fast, skilled players. But I think that's a team where even if you look at the Winnipeg Jets, the further you go down their lineup, a guy like McCarron, I think could bring really good value to a contending team, especially when you get into playoffs. A guy, like Luke Shannon, I've heard some teams asking about him, some scouts and things like that up in the media booths and things like that about adding someone that's won and has that, toughness element to him and that experience that could, you see more value in a player like that in a big, heavy series. And I think for a lot of these teams, you have to look at who your opponent's going to be. For Vegas is a big team. They play a big, heavy team. And if you feel like you're going to have to go through Vegas, you have to be able to match that or be able to hang around to a certain degree. Colton Sissons is a guy. He got off to, a really slow start this season, but, the last, 25, 26 games, he's been playing some excellent hockey. He's got his offensive production coming back up. He's a player that you can trust in any situation, can play up and down your lineup, good penalty killer, good face-off guy. So those three in particular, I think, Barry Trotz is probably getting some calls on.
C-Mace, since the last trade of Nyquist, Gus Nyquist, and obviously there are things swirling around this team as far as individuals they may move on from or try to get draft picks or whatnot. What have you, and they had a big win last night. I mean, it doesn't do anything for their record and their schedule moving forward, but I think just to have a win like that, it ups the morale. Like I told Willie, that chicken breast tastes a lot better when you're riding back home after a victory. But what are you seeing from this team in the midst of all of this stuff that is happening?
Well, when the Nyquist trade went down, it was an afternoon game, and we're all, sitting and waiting to do media and all that kind of stuff. And, they're moving Nyquist gear out of the room and for the potential, trade that eventually happened once they got all the details figured out. And you could really feel it. And I think that was probably one of the worst periods of hockey of the season, I think, because, although everybody knows the situation, I think until something happens like that, it's maybe not almost real. And I think the reality of the situation set in. You know, they don't really have playoffs to play for anymore. All the stuff that they've been hearing, you know, concerning guys like Nyquist could possibly get moved. And then once you finally get the news that, hey, you know, he's not playing tonight, it's a gut punch. And I think you could really sense that in those two back-to-back games. They eventually, you know, tried to, as the game went on, they got into it a little more emotionally invested. And then, you know, once you kind of accept that and you say, hey, you know what, we're going to have to find our own, you know, reason to play here. And we can't go out and play 20, you know, some odd more games the way that we played the Islanders and Rangers. And then I thought the Boston game, you know, they had a good combination of lines that seemed to work, but more so is their mentality. And so like, all right, we can't go out and, you know, it was embarrassing the way that they started those two hockey games, taking penalties, leaving their goalies hung out to dry. And then they went into Boston, you know, similar situation with the Bruins. They're still fighting for, you know, the playoff spot. They were 2 points out, and they came out and they were by far the better team, the Predators, against a desperate team. And you could just tell they kind of had that life back in their game. But it's so tough because you don't have that built-in motivation of playoffs. You have to manufacture that. You have to tell yourself every day, you know, you got to go and compete, and it's a lot of work just to get yourself to that level to be able to compete at the highest level with, you know, these desperate teams that have something to play for. But I thought that was a good way to end the road trip for sure.
Chris Mason is with us, and Mace, we're looking all of us for little signs of progress to hit Andrew Burnett's and Barry Trotz's goal, which is to feel better about the direction of things by the end of the season. We saw a couple last night for one game, and I think we're all curious where it goes. Luke Evangelista really paired up well with Ryan O'Reilly and Steven Stamkos. And Evangelista in particular is a guy that, to me, embodies a lot of Barry Trotz's vision of having his young nucleus of players graduate up to take bigger roles on the team. It hasn't happened to this point in the season for Luke, but that was one of his best games of the year. And he's still playing through a pretty significant injury that knocked him back for a while leading up to the break. But I liked what I saw from him last night.
Yeah, you know, when I look at Evangelista, I remember, you know, him talking about, you know, the impact that O'Reilly had on him when he first got to the club, and he'd go out early and working on some of the net front stuff and getting to the interior. So for a player that, you know, was a really highly skilled junior player, and it's maybe not ingrained in your DNA to have that, you know, that sandpaper, that grit to your game, I think he's really trying to, you know, it's been a process of getting that kind of element full time into his game to make it part of how he plays every game. And I think as a younger player, you'll see stretches of that, and then it goes away, and then you have to work hard to try to get that back in there. And I think when he's at his best, he's going to the net. He's being a little agitator. He's not a huge guy, but he'll get in there. He'll get on the body. He'll be all around the net. And I think when he's not feeling that way, and sometimes who you're playing with has, you know, a lot to do with, you know, how you play. And when you're playing with Ryan O'Reilly, you gotta hop on board. You have to, you know, play that way. And I think you saw that out of him in that game last night. He was willing to go to the net. He was getting on the forecheck. He made a lot of, you know, great plays, keeping pucks alive when they were able to keep the puck in the offensive zone just from that kind of hustle and grind game. And then which also, you know, allowed him to use his skill because they had the puck more. You know, Stamkos did a good job on O'Reilly's goal. You know, you wouldn't necessarily say he's a grinder type of player, but he handed it off to Evangelista. Then he drove the net hard, you know, taking two defensemen with him, which opened up space for Evangelista, who made a great pass over to O'Reilly, and they finished it off. And I just thought it was, you know, you feel good when you play like that, whether you win or lose. But obviously that line had a huge impact, and it seemed, you know, we'll see. Like you said, it's only one game, but we'll see. It seemed like the line combinations worked pretty effectively last night, and that's something that's been a major challenge this year for Brunette, is to try to find something up and down the lineup, you know, that you feel good about putting out there every shift. So, you know, one game, but it was a good game, and hopefully they can build on that.
Another guy that I think is in the spotlight this week because of the trade deadline is Tommy Novak, because you heard Elliott pretty heavily throw his name around on his podcast when he was discussing Nashville. You go back a year ago, there was a lot of talk about Tommy Novak. Should they sign him? Should they trade him? They kept him. We know what's happened this year. Last night was an interesting Tommy Novak game. He scores a big goal early in the game, but then later in the game, he's moved down in the lineup because they wanted a little more of a defensive unit with him to protect the lead. So it shows you the pluses and minuses that he has in his game. And when you weigh how does he fit in the future versus what's he worth on the trade market, I think he becomes a really intriguing guy to think about when you wonder what's in Barry Trotz's head right now.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things in his game, especially the second half of the season. He's played a lot better. He like everyone else got off to a slow start, but you see the offensive skill set that he has. He can be very effective when he's skating and confident. One of the things I think you saw kind of against Vancouver last year, that when the game got heavy, it was a little bit tough for him. He's still relatively new to the league and learning exactly, how he has to play in all these situations. He's played really well at the wing, when he's been there recently. Last night he was at center. And, situationally you have to do that because especially when you're on the road, because you don't control the matchups. And when you have three offensive or three younger players playing together, you can get into some trouble in some of those matchups if they're trying to get Panarin in that line. Or sorry, what's his name?
Pasternak's line
Pasternak,
that they matched
Pasternak
up and they got the tying goal in the third period against Novak's line.
Yeah. So then you want somebody that you trust in a defensive role. And McCarron's really, strong in the face-off circle and he's comfortable in those situations. But he's definitely a guy. I mean, if you need, he should be a top six guy. I think he's starting to play like that a little bit more here recently. But I mean, there's a lot of appeal to his game when he's skating. He's a really headsy player. He's a really good playmaker. He's definitely a player that could help out a team. He doesn't have a huge cap hit, but it'll be interesting. I'm sure, Barry's probably getting some calls on him and it's gonna be tough decisions, but that's what Barry's got. He's going to have the decision to make is, a lot of these players you're talking about, if you talk about Michael McCarron, he's a player that, you could still use next year and you don't want to necessarily lose. You need that element. If you trade him away, you're going to have to replace that somehow. And he's got a really good cap hit. He's a really good locker room guy, just a hard worker. And Colton Sisson, same thing. He's been a lifetime Pred. He's a guy that if you do end up trading him or deciding to do that, you're going to have to find someone to replace that role, which is not easy to do. So a lot of tough decisions here and only 3 days to do it.
Chris Mason, Predators television analyst, joining us on D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick. Chris, we'll see you tomorrow. Predators and Kraken tomorrow night at 7:00.
And Elliot Friedman heavily rumoring what you pointed out to me. I think it was maybe off the air, but
yes,
it looks like the Kraken might have a shakeup trade in the works here involving Oliver Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gourde. And Gourde would be interesting going back to Tampa, where he's been a really successful player for them.
Yes, we will keep an eye on that. Chris, great stuff. We'll see you tomorrow. Predators and Kraken tomorrow at 7:00. Of course, all coverage here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We'll wrap up the show next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingen. Stillman and Company coming up next. Jared Stillman actually gracing us with his presence in studio.
He
It's
came
like
in hot, too. He came in hot with questions.
Yeah.
I'm like Sam Darnold.
he
I'm
did.
seeing ghosts. Jared Stillman in studio. Can't wait.
Right. Yeah. Did you notice he did not come in hot with the Sam Darnold discussion?
No, he didn't. He's going to keep that close to
Because
his hip.
there
I think.
seems to be some lack of momentum in that direction, at least for now.
We'll
never
see what
Yeah, we'll
Jared has
see.
to say about the Sam Darnold news from Paul Gaharski coming up at 2 o'clock. In case you missed that, Paul Gaharski reported earlier today that I'm trying to find the exact, this was his tweet 6 hours ago. Quote, the Titans aren't going to be into Sam Darnold. If he was a shorter term, cheaper option, sure. But as long as he's going to be a long-term high dollar commitment for somebody, it's not going to be them.
And I think that even shortchanges what it looks like right now, which would be he's so by far the most decorated quarterback who will be on the market. That is going to only inflate his value even more. So we're talking about a guy you're going to have to way overpay based on what his credentials are to get. It'd be very, very different if there were 4 or 5 other guys and you would be picking him out and trying to weigh getting him at the right price, but you're not getting him at the right price. You are being gouged if you want Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the market will dictate what Sam Darnold makes. I do truly believe he's more concerned about his guarantee money rather than, the actual the AAV is for the agent. That's who that's for. I want to know how much guarantee money I'm getting because it's going to coincide with the years. But what's in his favor too is that, okay, this, even though you will be paying me say 85 million guarantee, because that's what TD presented to Graziano. So if you offer me 85 million in guarantee money, even though I sort of proved it last year that I can do this. Well, now you have a 3-year period to earn more money down the line because you will be 30 years old the minute you are out of your next contract. 30 years old. So to me, if I'm him, I'm more worried about the guarantee than I am the AAV, because my thing is I will get another contract. I will prove to them that I am, because the next contract, if I prove to them 3 years in a row, I'm a $55 million guy now, closer to a $60 million guy. So you can play it from that standpoint. That's why I said the market will dictate it. And if the market says you're not a $40 million guy, or you're not close to it, then that's when the Titans come back and play, I believe.
I still come back to this. You can fill in the blank, whatever quarterback you want. And the Titans, I don't think will be in position to have a big year, to compete, have a chance to win playoff games, a legit chance to win to make a playoff run. I just don't think they will be there. And therefore, to overpay for the best available quarterback does not make sense to me. I am in more the exploratory phase. Experiment if you'd like. Try the next reclamation project. Get the next Sam Darnold for a cheaper price. Or if you feel like the best quarterback out there is worth the number 1 pick, that's fine too. I tend to be leaning in a different direction, but no matter who it is, you can fill in the blank with whoever. You're not going to be in position to win next year. So proceed accordingly. Build the best way possible.
A lot of breaking news in the NFL today. We mentioned Tyler Lockett being released, Christian Kirk being released, Max Crosby becoming the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. DK Metcalf has requested a trade. That was another piece of news. Zach Bond has signed a 3-year, $51 million contract with the Eagles, including $34 million guaranteed at signing, an additional $1.5 million in incentives and escalators.
Now, he's a guy that was a bargain basement pickup that's now earned a big deal, right?
Signed a $3.5 million contract.
So he just earned a big pay raise. But now they will be expecting more from him.
Yes.
Of course. Yeah, now they will.
So now we'll see if he can sustain that level. But to his credit, he gets paid. he's earned the money.
But that's what
That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. It's absolutely.
You have to hope,
Mhm.
if you're the Titans, for example, that you can find your Zach Bond.
Sure.
You sign him for $1 million. You sign him for 1 year, $3.5 million. Turns into an All-Pro.
There you go.
They
That-
need good stories. They need hits.
That's what I
They
said.
need hits. They need
This year,
doubles. They need triples.
They need
Occasional home run.
impact players, and they need guys that can play and contribute and be an impact immediately, like yesterday.
We will discuss this further tomorrow live from Bridgestone Arena. The Nashville Predators are back in town hosting the Seattle Kraken tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Stillman and Company coming up next.
Be love, love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, and wonderful Wednesday. Peace.